Welcome back to Mars, the new terrain beta for Stationeers. This is episode 12, and sorry about the long delay between 11 and 12. I've been working on a lot of things to make episode 12 actually work. Anyway, today we're going to address a couple of things. We're going to work on the gas mixture in a hydroponics grow room so that the plants don't die and they, always have their carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and so forth, while still remaining a livable environment for you to have your helmet or suit off. I'm going to address the elephant in the room real quick. It looks like we're getting really close to the beta branch becoming the release branch. It's starting to warn me about old saves. My saves are still loading in the beta. I don't know specifically whether or not the beta will still load in the main branch when it's no longer the beta. I'm hoping so, but if not, that's the nature of early access. That's the nature of beta. Yeah. Anyway, so it's a nice, beautiful dawn here. I waited until a storm had just passed because I want to show you some things from the outside. But first, let's start in my grow room. So let's switch over to atmospherics. And you'll see that my carbon dioxide is down to 0.38. Well, the plants want 1% minimum. And so I'm obviously way below that. Now, this room has good temperature control. And it has good control over the grow lights. 2 separate zones. But it does not have any automatic control over the atmospheric mix. Now, this is new. And it works. But it is very labor intensive and not wonderful. Actually, let me go ahead and put this down here and show this to you real quick. Okay, now this is pure CO2, which I drew off of a tank. You'll see that in a minute. And it's not particularly a large quantity, but it's good enough for the example right here. I have a volume pump. I have a pressure regulator, and the CO2 level is going up thanks to emptying this tank into the room. Now that's all well and good. I can get the CO2 level back above 1%. I can get it to 50% if I want to, as long as I don't want to breathe in here. But it's not optimal by any means. Now, I don't have automated anything as far as the hydroponics. That'll come later. I'm still dealing with a lot of other things I want to do first before I set up Larry.
Waste tank caution.
That's lovely. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and shut that off for right now because this is the original grow room. And in the interest of trying to figure out exactly how to handle setting up proper atmospheric ratios, I decided to duplicate my grow room on the other side of my base because no matter how bad I made a mistake, I'd still have the original grow room no matter how manual it was. So, we have nitrogen tank, we have oxygen tank, and we have carbon dioxide. We have filtration. I'm just dumping pollutants out into the atmosphere. I'm taking nitrogen, putting it in the tank. I'm putting oxygen into the tank, and I'm putting CO2 into the tank. You might see these gas canister storages. That's for filling up individual tanks, and that's where I got the sample size. shall we say, of CO2 to take down to my grow room 1. It's terribly inefficient. Now, out here, we have oxygen coming into a gas mixer. We have nitrogen coming into a gas mixer. And we're mixing that at a ratio of 70% nitrogen to 30% oxygen. Sounds great, right? It is. Now, these tanks were pre-filled, and I'll get back into that in just a minute. Part of it was with ice crushers, and part of it was outgassing from my furnace. So we're going from this gas mixer over to this gas mixer. Now here I'm mixing 100% of this with 5% of carbon dioxide. Now, because the pressures and the temperatures of the different tanks, the mole levels are different, the mix is not perfect, but it's close enough. Now we're going from here, we have a nice little analyzer, to a pressure regulator. This is important for, keeping the atmospheric level in the base without blowing out walls and so forth. On this side, these are both passive vents. You'll see them from the inside. To a back pressure regulator. This is set higher, 110 kilopascals, as opposed to the back pressure at 105. That creates an airflow. This is a buffer tank. Okay, and of course from up here you can also see my grow lights that I've set up. So let's go inside real quick. Like I said, I duplicated my grow room both to expand my ability to grow things in different environments, and also I didn't want to cut off my supply of food even if the other one is completely manual. I have so many hours of trying different methods and so many horrendous failures that we're not going to talk about it. But I have duplicated my heating and cooling from Grow Room 1 because it works just fine. It is currently set for 22, and as you might notice, it is 22. We have where are they? We have passive vents for in and out. Of course, we have the water. We have hydroponic stations. We have the ice crusher for water, basically. Well, actually, no, this would be... This would be for oxygen and so forth. We have the gas sensor, which is set up, and we'll show you the code here. But basically what happens is air flows out, air flows in. Everything that goes out goes into the buffer tank and then is fed into those filtration devices, which you saw over here. Everything that comes out goes into the buffer tank and is fed into the filtration, oxygen, nitrogen, CO2, and of course, I consider the pollutants to be strictly a waste gas at this point. It is good for certain refrigeration, but I don't need it just now. And of course, I have a battery here to make sure that things keep running. Ice crushers to help fill up the tank, especially oxygen. The system is by no means not perfect, and in fact it is actually pretty slow. Now, I started out with a primarily oxygen environment in this room, and like I said, from the mixers, I'm basically trying for like a 70-30 nitrogen oxygen, and then take away from both of those a little bit to get the approximately 4% carbon dioxide. Now, you saw from Grow Room 1 that my plants were very unhappy with the lack of carbon dioxide. That's because the plants, or at least wheat and potatoes in particular, consume carbon dioxide while producing oxygen. And so as it depletes the carbon dioxide, eventually you'll get the warning that you don't have the appropriate atmosphere for things to grow. So you'll go from thriving towards flowering and seeding to moderately well to barely growing. And I presume eventually you'd also end up with just won't grow or dying. Of course, we have the water. We have the ice crusher for water. We're just venting the nitrogen at this point. We have the refrigerator over here for the foods because they spoil rather easily. Okay, now we'll come back to the IC code in a moment. I have had to exceedingly demand increase my power capability yet again. I had a missing window here, and a combination of storms destroyed all of these, all 5 of these lovely solar panels. I have built the weather station, but I have not set up the code yet for the automatic alerts to my tablet. That's coming up very soon. Of course, we have the solar panel circuitry here. Here we have my oxygen room. I had to, of course, enclose these solar panels to protect them from storms, and this room is now considerably larger than the last time you saw it. It is getting fairly large, but they are arranged in more or less a checkerboard pattern so that they're not trying to block each other. I'm one step away from going ahead and taking the lander and grinding it down. There's only really one thing stopping me from doing that right now, and, well, that's because I'm still fighting with power issues. But I have set up a wired beacon, but when the base loses power, you can't find your way home. That's where the lander comes in. It never goes dead. As long as the lander exists, that beacon will work. So, let's go ahead and go back to Grow Room 2. And we'll have the great unveiling of how well does this system work. It works quite well, but it's very slow. I did start out, like I said, with a fairly high O2 content and very little carbon dioxide, and of course it had some pollutants in there too, so forth and so on. So, here we are. Since I'm aiming for like 70% nitrogen, 30-ish% oxygen, and at least 4% CO2, and as little or none of pollutants, considering it started out at about 85% oxygen and nearly no nitrogen, it's very slowly working its way down to what I want. Now, I have a hypothesis that if I started out with primarily nitrogen, or closer to my desired mix, it would be able to maintain that level with actual quite ease. You know, as long as I don't have a blowout of the walls or anything stupid like that, it should be able to maintain everything nicely. So, I have the laptop here. And we'll just go ahead and pluck this for just a second. And we will import. Did I grab the right chip? I did not. That was smart. Okay. Let's grab the right chip. There we go. So this is based on a workshop item. I will try to make sure to put a link and give proper credit where credit is due to the original author. It is slightly modified from the workshop, but not by much. I am not claiming to have written this. So basically we have the input and output gas regulators. We have the gas sensor, which of course is capable of telling what the room is currently comprised of. We're turning on and off the gas mixers, and of course the gas analyzer tells us what we have coming in. So basically, I will let you peruse this. Feel free to pause it, just in case I don't get the link to the workshop item immediately. It's only 33 lines of code, and you have ample opportunity to copy it from here, but I will, of course, give proper attribution to the actual author. One of the problems with the code on the workshop is line 14. It was not turning on and off gas mixer 2. These were both set for gas mixer 1. That was causing a problem and actually caused a pipe burst. So even if you go to the workshop, you do need to change line 14. So that is the most of what I've spent probably 40 hours working on. And granted, part of it was waiting on see if it was actually working, because the system is slow. And of course, this is a whole new room, properly pressurized, that had to be built and wired and so forth, just so I would have an experimental lab that I wouldn't be destroying my only food source. What's coming up is probably yet more power, and I still want to build that garage so that I can leave the rover assembled. I'm going to be setting up more of the deep miners, which, they're doing just dandy. There is now a second centrifuge. I'm not sure if that was in episode 11 or not, but there is a second centrifuge, and it is properly ducted into my dump room. Plenty of silver, plenty of gold. Now I need some of the other stuff. I'll be taking the rover with the deep miner cartridge and finding appropriate locations. And I will either, calculate the power requirements and build an appropriate number of solar panels, which is probably what will happen first. And then in a later episode, I'll probably use the microwave transmitters for setting up power transmission from a central location to my outposts for the deep miners. I will probably use crates and boxes and whatnot on the rover for transporting stuff back, because I'm fairly sure that I don't specifically want to make 700 chutes to move stuff from one part of the map to another. But anyway, that's where we are right now. The initial gassing from the furnace, nice shutoff valve, comes all the way over here into the filtration system, and that was how I got some of the initial gases into the tanks. The tanks do need to be similarly pressurized for the mixers to work. If they are at completely wild temperatures and wild pressures, the mixers will not work correctly. So I hope some of you found this interesting, and please drop a comment in the comment section down below. Please drop a like too. I would appreciate it if you would share the video with others and possibly subscribe if you're not. And also, I mean, I'd love to have a comment on, aside from the fact that I had to do so much work off recording or off video to get this together, to get it built and get it tested. I would like your comments on whether you prefer this update style of a video with what has happened and how it works, or whether you want to actually watch me do the exploring, the mining, the construction, step at a time with all the bumps and bruises of, wow, I need one more of this. Well, I need to get from here to there, and now I got to wire it. I mean, I'm perfectly willing to do it either way, and the next video will probably be back to the original format of steps. I'll try and put in chapter marks so you can skip ahead when you get bored. Trying to keep things interesting, but also educational and entertaining. So, drop a like, drop a comment, please subscribe, and tell me what you think of this format. Till next time, be safe.